Okay, so bit of an off-the-cuff video here because I've been seeing this a lot in my two Dragon Prince videos. I point out in both, I believe, that General Amaya is deaf, and there have been multiple comments saying no she isn't or she's mute, and just to clarify, yes, General Amaya is indeed deaf. Now, the reason for this confusion, I would bet, is that some people just see someone who's not talking. She doesn't ever verbally express herself through her own voice. But there could be a reason for that. Now, I am not an expert on these matters. There are plenty of resources out there if you want to learn more about the disabilities of being mute or deaf or anything of the sort. But sometimes people who are deaf, because they grow up not hearing how the average person talks who doesn't have that disability, their voice isn't going to end up being the same as, mine or any of yours maybe. Now, sometimes this is a source of embarrassment, which it's shitty that that's the case. No one should be making fun of people that are deaf because their voice sounds a little different. But the fact of the matter is that people are shitty and will do so. Also, sometimes you might notice that because their voice is a little different, it may be a kind of barrier in some conversations, just like how if someone has an accent, it's sort of the same thing in that regard. So it can just be easier for her, General Maya. She has a translator. She's in a position of power where she requires a translator, and she has one. What's that guy's name again? Gren. Gren is his name. He is really charming. Amaya has Gren around almost at all times, or other people who work with her and probably have a good understanding of sign language, and it makes sense because she has that ability as a person in a privileged position. Now, you might be wondering, well, where's your proof? There's a lot of confusion because people misinterpret some stuff about the show. So what we're going to do here is we're going to look at a few things, some posts on Reddit, some talk from the actual people who work at Wonderstorm, and just point out, here's the evidence. Because I have mentioned it and people are still seemingly confused, and also maybe this will end up being helpful for someone out there. Okay, so there is an interview on Polygon, which, hopefully you're not the type of person that hears Polygon and knee-jerk reaction, wow, I can't take anything they say seriously. But anyway, so they have an interview with some of the people at Wonderstorm, and the title of this here article is How the Dragon Prince Carefully Handled General Amaya's Deafness. So this Polygon article is also building off of a Reddit AMA that happened around the time of the first season. And two of the people being interviewed here are Ian Hendry and Devin Gill. I'm sorry if that's mispronouncing your last name. Don't mean to. Anyway, there's a point in this piece that directly addresses Amaya's deafness. So let's just look at that real quick. So here, in this specific part, Devin specifically addresses the matter of disabilities and in regards to the history of this creative team. They bring up Toph from Last Airbender, who is a blind girl, and then they also are talking about the creation of General Amaya. So reading from this, and then one day we were in the middle of writing the script, and Aaron Ahaz, one of the show's co-creators, had the idea, what if she's also deaf? So there, yes, she is confirmed to be deaf. During the creation of the show, Wonderstorm talked to and got advice and really dug into the details that they needed to in regards to hard of hearing organizations and the American Sign Language Organization to make it authentic and respectable towards people that are deaf, which is always appreciated when you're handling these sorts of topics. So if you're ever in a creative position and you want to write a story that has someone that has some sort of disability or mental health issue or anything of that variety, that has a different perspective than yours, it's always a wise idea to consult people who are in that position. So good on Wonderstorm for doing exactly that. And now we're going to pull up a post on the Dragon Prince subreddit that it doesn't actually have anything to do with the Raylan shipping, because If you've been on that subreddit recently, it is mostly posts that are shipping Rayla and Callum, or talking about all the posts that are shipping Rayla and Callum. So this Reddit post is called "The Little Details of Amaya's Deaf Representation." So to give credit to the person who posted this, it is Earthbound Eclectic. And they run down a list of little things here that are signs that, yeah, she is indeed deaf, and they did a good job of actually representing that. So point number 1, in the lodge's hallway, when Callum loudly referred to all Amaya's human troops to warn Rayla, Amaya says, "Callum, you know it doesn't help to yell," referring to her understanding his speech. Now you may be wondering, how does Amaya know if Callum is yelling? Well, just through body language. Think about when you see someone yelling, the way that their mouth opens up, their entire body language changes. This is something that people that do not have these sorts of disabilities can pick up on, so obviously people who have to rely on body language to understand what someone is saying, well, that becomes a strength of Amaya's. Point number 2, when Callum knocked on the shield of Amaya's back to get her attention rather than speaking, this kind of thing is a common way to get someone's attention in the deaf community. So yeah, if you're behind somebody who is deaf and you're trying to get their attention, you tap them on the shoulder or something. Makes sense. Point number 3. When Amaya had Rayla prisoner, Rayla began to look away, but Amaya grabs her chin and says, "Don't look away from me." So on the surface, it might seem that it was sort of a power move in response to Rayla's irreverence, but really it was because Amaya needs to see Rayla's lips. And the final point, at Sarai's grave, Amaya begins to walk away from Viren, who continues to talk. Gren automatically begins interpreting since she could no longer see Viren's lips. Another thing with the lip reading, and also Gren just being a wonderful guy. Now this post has plenty of replies to it. A lot of them are actually well written and thoughtful. The community of the Dragon Prince is actually, at least on that subreddit, in my experience, very pleasant and very nice. On my videos, not so much. Don't appreciate the death threats because I don't like Avatar as much as I like Korra. Please stop that. But that's YouTube for you. Anyway, there's a lot of remarks about how the body language of Amaya and the characters she's interacting with in any given scene are actually really smartly detailed. And I think this gets even better in Season 2 as the animation and all the character designs just get way stronger. And there's also people pointing out that, yes, she is deaf, but that is not Amaya's whole character. She's also a really well-respected general. She's a just very kind person. She has a good sense of humor. There's this dynamic that, unfortunately, we haven't gotten much of in a while, but her relationship with Gren is really sweet and endearing. Other people have pointed out that lip reading is not a 100% foolproof way for the hard of hearing to be able to communicate with people. It makes total sense. It's a difficult thing to do, and especially given that the English language is confusing enough on its own. But there's this is pointed out by a user called Call Me the Heaven Man. Okay, will do. And as I agree with them here, their point is that, well, this may not be a representation of all of the deaf community or the hard of hearing community, but Amaya is in a position of power who maybe she just really got that skill down given that she's a general and needs it. There is also another portion of the interview that I want to point out. They talk about not translating everything, that sometimes they allow Amaya to speak for herself. One of the big ones is in Season 1 when she visits Sarai's grave. She says something that is not outright translated for the viewer to hear. And this is confirmed to be a conscious choice of the creative staff because this is asked by the Polygon writer whose name I didn't mention at the top, but it is Alex Barash, I believe. Yeah. So they ask if it's a conscious choice to have some translation left out, to leave. And Devin confirms that it's very much a deliberate choice. And they specifically do remark about the time at Sarai's grave. Now, according to a Reddit user, so I don't understand sign language. It is not a skill of mine, so I'm just going to, for the time being, take what Reddit user Jacques Rond says. And so they translate it as, "Hello, sister. You were my hero, perfect, strong, and unbreakable, kind and loyal. I'm sorry, older sister, I failed you, your children were safe, and I let them slip away." Which, given the context of what's happening in the show and their relationship, that makes a whole lot of sense to me. But Jacques also points out that their translation isn't maybe the 100% correct one. They mentioned in a lower post that there have been different versions of it, but they do roughly all kind of come out in the same gist, as they point out. Also, finally here, I've seen some other posts in comments on my video that are in regards to Amaya's ability to command an army or be a general. Now, sure, logically speaking, you would assume that it would be a hurdle for her, that maybe one that most people would not be able to get over. Now, for the point of thematic resonance, I would much rather have a show take liberties with realism, because realism is not what you're always trying to go after when you're making any sort of creative effort. Because realism can be very boring, and realism isn't necessarily the greatest tool of a writer. So I'd rather them commit to that fully than kind of hamstring themselves with realism in a show that is a cartoon, a show where people are taking beatings that should probably break their bones, and that just doesn't happen. There's a lot of things that if you want to get nitpicky about realism, you shouldn't stop there. Just saying. Okay, hopefully this has been helpful to anyone who has been confused about the matter of Amaya's hearing situation. She is indeed deaf. This is something that's even... If you look through all the fan-made wikis and whatnot, it's mentioned there as well. Amaya is 100% deaf, and I still honestly expect comments to be questioning this in all the videos that I posted about the Dragon Prince so far. But hey, I'd rather have people confused about Amaya's disabilities rather than maybe people suggesting that, I don't know, Viren, the person who's trying to kill children, he seems like an alright guy to me.